When I was 28 years old, I decided to climb Mount Sinai in Egypt and ask God what I should do with my life. After all, I was told and I believed that God had a plan for my life, like a very special plan. You know, plans for me to prosper and fly like an eagle or something like that. And I thought, all right, Sinai, if God once broke God's silence on this mountaintop, maybe something would happen again. You know, I wasn't looking for, tablets of stone or even like a thunderous voice, but like a hint, a clue, something that I was on the right track and that my life meant something. And also, I was living in Israel at the time. I was going to graduate school, and I was living there with my wife and a 2-year-old, and I wanted to know, should I stay on for more education? Should I go back home to the church world that I had left? What should I do? And Israel, I was a weird place. It was a time of upheaval. I don't know, a kind of spiritual upheaval. One morning I might be standing right where Jesus stood, which felt sort of good, like, hey, well, at least near enough. And in the afternoon, I might be at the mall picking up my army-issued gas mask because of the war with Iraq near the shoe store, which was odd. And I was unsure. I felt a kind of uncertainty in my life. And as genuinely as I could, I turned in good faith toward this mountain, toward Sinai, to ask God for some help. And I meant it sort of with all the sincerity that I could conjure up. Just help me. And I set about toward Sinai, and this was sort of prearranged because I took a graduate course on Egypt that ended with a climb to the very top of Mount Sinai at night for the sunrise. And I thought, this is it. And I was reading in the Torah, and it said, prepare yourself, deny yourself today and tomorrow, and on the third day, I will appear to you. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to take the Bible literally, even though I was learning in class, maybe not the best idea, but I thought, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to deny myself, I'm going to fast for 2 days, and then I'm going to climb to the top of Mount Sinai, and I'm going to pray with everything I have just for a little nudge, a little hint. So our professor had arranged a kind of special way to get to Sinai, which sounded awesome at first. He said, we're traveling by Land Rover. And these are like old school Land Rovers, like Indiana Jones kind of Land Rovers. And we pile in the back a bunch of students on these bench seats facing one another. And at first, the first half an hour is totally awesome. And we're like jerking and swaying. And it's the Land Rovers are being driven by Bedouin. And at a certain point, an hour goes by, and an hour and a half goes by, and our enthusiasm is waning. And one student hits her head on the ceiling, and I'm pounding on the side, and I'm yelling at the Bedouin to slow down, and they're just lighting cigarettes and giving us the thumbs up. And it's getting late in the afternoon, and people are starting to talk about food, and we stop, and the Bedouin have this like desert spread with their bread and their tea, and they're welcoming us, except I'm fasting. And I have to pretend that like I'm not feeling that well and I need to go for a walk and I'm over here because I don't want anyone to know that I'm fasting because otherwise it won't work, is what I thought. God will say, I was going to show up, but then, people found out about your fast and it just doesn't work that way. And I did manage with like great spiritual power to not eat during lunch. And we climbed back into the Land Rovers, and I thought, surely we'll be there soon. And the hours ticked by, and evening was approaching, and everyone at this point, especially the Americans, all they were talking about was food. At least that's all I heard. And we get to the hotel at the base of Mount Sinai, and the students rush out and go straight into the dining hall. They don't even grab their bags, and I just cannot help myself. I go straight into the buffet line, and I grab a plate, and I start eating in line like a spiritual slob, thinking, I don't know, maybe I can make amends with God on the way up. So I stagger back to my room, and at this point I'm feeling, I don't know, deflated and sort of wondering what I'm doing here. And the alarm goes off at 3 a.m. and I walk outside, and it's cold and it's clear, and I remember why I'm here, and I put my coat on and I grab my prayer book. I had this like Hebrew English book of Psalms because I was also kind of secretly in love with Judaism, and I tucked that into my jacket and started to climb with resolve to the top of Mount Sinai. And I realized within the first few hundred feet, this is not exactly what I imagined. I thought I'd be like a lonely monk, sort of just ascending in silence. But I was on a trail, and I started passing Russian women in high heels and Asian tourists taking photos, and the Bedouin were back. And this time, they were asking if I wanted a camel ride. You, my friend, it's too far. Camel ride, take a camel ride, don't walk. And I want to get past these people as fast as possible, so I'm hiking and walking as fast as I can, and I'm sweating, even though it's very cold. And I realize after about an hour that this is like a serious climb. This isn't like just a walk up to the top of Mount Sinai. And I'm starting to get very cold, and I'm thinking about all the clothes I should have brought, which are back in the hotel room. And at one point I stop, and I can feel my body shaking, and I can't make it stop. I'm just shivering. And I look down in the moonlight, and in a little crevice, I see a ski hat wedged in there, nasty and covered with dust, and I don't care. And I reach down, and I pull it out, and I shake the thing off, and I put it on my head, and I keep going, and I round the bend near the summit, and I can hear a hum. I'm not sure what this hum is, but I hear a hum. I'm like, what is that? And I come around the corner, and the Bedouin have set up tents with lights and a generator, and they're selling hot chocolate and Snickers bars, which I go straight in, I buy a hot chocolate, I eat a Snickers bar, and then for $10, I rent a blanket from a Bedouin so I can stay warm on the summit. And I wander out there with just a few people. And it is vast, and it is empty, and it is silent, and it is quiet, and there's no human habitation as far as you can see. And the sun begins to come up, and at the granite hilltops are the things that light up first with this orange fire. And I hear like some soft singing. The hundreds of people who had made the hike at night begin to sing a hymn. And it's very moving. And I begin to recognize the tune, and it's the Beatles' Here Comes the Sun. And I'm thinking, what in the hell am I doing up here? And then they start cheering as the sun comes up, like we had won something, and the crowds disperse, and I take out my book, my prayer book, and I open it up, and I'm by myself, and as simply as I can, I pray. I try the Hebrew because I think maybe that will work. Maybe God speaks Hebrew. I try the English, and I have nothing. I feel nothing. I think nothing. I don't know what I'm doing up here. I don't know what I'm even looking for up here. And I close the prayer book, and I have a kind of nothing feeling inside, almost a kind of numbness. And I turn, and I don't really know what to do. So I just start walking back down the trail by myself. I returned the $10 rented blanket and kind of round the bend beneath the summit, and there are these camels sitting there resting from their night of forced labor, taking lazy people up. And all these people had been walking by, and and I'm just one of them. And I walk past this camel, and the camel's sitting down on the ground on his knees. And I walk past, and all of a sudden, he decides to swing his massive face around to the middle of the trail, and he goes straight for my face. And in the only moment of clarity I've had so far, I'm like a ninja. And I throw up my elbow, and I block the camel from biting me in the face, but now my elbow is in the very back of his throat. And his teeth are on my upper arm, and he begins to yank me back and forth like this. And I'm swinging back and forth like a dog with a chew toy, and I'm screaming, "Help! Help!" And there's nobody. There's nobody. There are no Bedouin. There are no people. I'm just completely alone, me and this camel. And I am cussing. I'm combining cuss words. I'm inventing cuss words. I said things that have never been said on Mount Sinai. I violate all the commandments, all in one fell swoop. And the only thing I can think of is with my left hand to punch the camel as hard as I can in the face. So I reach back and I swing, and he lets go. And I'm standing there, face to face, and eye to eye with this beast. And at this point, the whole world has stopped spinning. And the camel takes a breath and then spits snot all over my face. And I couldn't do it. I could not do it. I could not do it right. I couldn't fast. I couldn't pray. I couldn't believe. I couldn't find the real Jesus. I couldn't make sense of the Bible. I couldn't make sense of my own faith anymore. I thought that if I moved to the holy places, if I went to the Holy Land, if I climbed the holiest mountain and learned the holiest language and studied the holiest book, that at the end of all this, I'd have something real, some kind of contact with God, that my life would make sense, that there would be some kind of divine plan. But what happened to me is that everything I believed about God went away. It unraveled. And I couldn't put it back together again. And everything I thought I was supposed to believe about God stopped working. And inside, I felt like a kind of spiritual failure. Like I was disappointing to myself. And I turned to walk down the mountain. And I had been trying so hard to be a spiritual person. I just wanted to be a spiritual guy. But instead, I was cold. I was alone. I had bruises on my arm. I had saliva on my face. And I just wanted to go home. But I didn't know what home was anymore. Thank you.